slides will also come into the recording in beginning slide.
Yeah. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
So yesterday we started this chapter, plant water relation, and we discussed the part which is included, and we are not going to discuss the part which is not included, it is removed this year from the syllabus. So yesterday we discussed this, then root hair structure, then we discussed the structure of root hair as well as as I told you, the regions of root. And now we are coming to the last point from this chapter, that is water available to roots for absorption. Now there are different types of water, as yesterday we were discussing about it, that plants absorb water from the rhizosphere, the microenvironment surrounding the root, that is rhizosphere. The environment which surrounds the roots, that is called as rhizosphere, is that particular area. Water present in the soil occurs as gravitational, that is free water. Then number 2, hygroscopic water. Number 3, combined water. And the last, that is capillary. So these 4 types of water are present in the soil. But we need to learn and remember which type of water plants can utilize or use, or it is available to the plants. Now we'll talk one by one. Water percolates deep due to the gravity in the soil, and this is called gravitational water. Now whenever there is rain, first of all the surface area, and then it goes deep to the ground, that is ground level, and that is because of the gravitational force, right? So there it is stored, that is called as gravitational water, and that is not available to the plants for absorption, because of the gravity of the earth it goes deep down. Then next is fine soil particles imbibe, absorb water and hold it. This is called hygroscopic water. Means there is rain, soil particles, they become wet, they imbibe and then absorb water and hold it. But this water is called as hygroscopic water, and roots cannot absorb this water. Then the next is water present in the form of hydrated oxides of different compound. That means oxides of silicon, aluminum, etc. And that is called as combined water because it is mixed. This water is in the mixed form, combined form. So this combined form of water is of no use to the plants. So it is also not available to the plants for absorption. So gravitational water, hygroscopic water, and this combined water is of no use for the absorption of roots for the plants. Now, which is the next remaining? That amount of water is held in pores present between the neighboring soil particles due to capillarity. Due to capillarity, this water is present in between the soil particles. There are a number of soil particles present, right? So in between these soil particles, whatever the gap is present, whatever the small areas are present, pores are present, and in that particular area, in those areas, whatever the in that particular space, whatever the water is available, that water, it forms a capillary type of, that means a small tube like this thing is made available, and like a small tube, that means capillary, they form the structure, and this water only is available, and so the plants can absorb this water, that is called as capillary water. So out of those 4 types, only capillary water is available to the plants for the absorption. Okay, only this much part was is present in your syllabus this year for this chapter 6. So we will shift to the next chapter, that is called as plant growth regulators. They're also called as growth hormones. Hormones, you know the word hormone. We have used in the biotechnology, you know, human hormones and the commonly used one. So like that, in case of plants also, hormones play the same type of role. For the proper growth of the plants, these hormones are playing very important role. So the term hormone was coined for the first time by Starling in animal physiology. The internal factors that influence growth are called growth hormones or growth regulators, as they inhibit, promote, or modify the growth. Either they are responsible for the inhibition of the growth, or promoting the growth, or modifying its growth. So these are the roles. So that's why these are called as regulator. They regulate. So growth promoters are auxins, gibberellins, and cytokinins. And growth inhibitors are in plants are ethylene and abscisic acid. All phytohormones are growth regulators. That means which are present in the plant, they are growth regulators. So basically 2 categories are present. One is called as promoters. The second category is called as inhibitors. So growth promoters and growth inhibitors. What is that regulator? It's an organic compound and can be natural or synthetic. It modifies or controls one or more specific physiological processes within a plant, but the sites of action and production are different. It might be the same or different, depends on the type of um, growth regulator. So that means what? The site where it is produced is one and the action is at the different place. So it also may happen, or the same place wherever it is produced, there also the action can be shown. So if the compound is produced within the plant, this is called as plant hormone. But internal plant hormones and lab created hormones are called together as plant growth regulators. So when it is produced within the plant, that is considered to be plant hormone. Now, depending on the basis of origin, there are these 3 categories. One is natural growth hormones, second synthetic growth hormones, and the third, that is postulated growth hormones. Third category that has been removed from our syllabus, so we are not going to discuss, but we will be stressing on the first 2, that is the natural growth regulators and synthetic growth regulators. First, what are these peculiar points we will talk about? That is natural growth regulators. They are produced by some tissues in plant. Whereas synthetic, they are artificially produced, but they are similar to the natural hormones in physiological activity. So natural growth regulators are called as endogenous because they are present within the cell, within the plant. So they are considered to be endogenous, or that means origin is from within the cell, the plant. So these are considered to be endogenous hormones. Whereas the other one, synthetic, they are exogenous. They are not produced in the plant. Their production is outside the cell, outside the plants. They are synthetic. That's why they are called as synthetic hormones. So they are exogenous hormones. Now, some of the examples you can remember as auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, ethylene, abscisic acid. They are all natural hormones. But synthetically also, they all are produced in the form of 2,4-D, NAA, IBA, 2,4-5-T. So these are some of the examples which are the same, but they are synthetically produced. Now, these are some of the examples for each type of growth hormones. So classification of these growth regulators is like there are different categories, but we are going to discuss only up to 5 because that up to that only it is there included in the syllabus. So first is auxins. The examples are IAA, that means indole acetic acid, IBA, indole butyric acid, naphthalene acetic acid, 2,4-D, 2,4-dihydroxyacid acid, acetate, and then gibberellins. Second is gibberellin. There are different types of gibberellic acids, GA1, GA2, GA3, GA7, like that. Cytokinins, basically there are 2 categories of examples, that is kinetin and zeatin. ethylene, that is ethylene, ethifone, etheryl. These are some of the examples. DOM is commonly called as abscisic acids. Now we'll come to the next. These are the major groups as divided: plant growth promoters and plant growth inhibitors. You have to remember like this only. So what are the plant growth promoters? Auxins, gibberellins, and cytokinins. They play very important role in the growth of the plant body, plant tissue. Whereas ethylene and abscisic acid, they are considered to be growth inhibitors, but they are also playing very important role. Now we will discuss one by one. We will discuss each one. That time you will come to know what these inhibitors also are very important, playing very important role. This is just shown that how these different types of plant hormones they are produced and where is their activity. So if you see the first one, that is apical structure, that is the control of stem elongation, that is done by auxins and gibberellic acid. Then initiation of flowering, there for that flower hormones are present. Then here at the particular axis, control of cell division, that is cytokinins and gibberellic acid, again they play a role. Now stomatal closure, that is also very important, that abscisic acid plays the important role. So this is just a rough diagram which shows the role of these different kinds of hormones, plant hormones. Now we'll talk one by one, we will study. First, that is auxin. The word auxin has been derived from a Greek word auxine, that means to grow or increase. And it was first isolated from human urine. These are generally produced by the growing apex of stem and roots of the plants. So the region is what? Growing part of stem and root. Remember, this was the first group of plant hormones discovered. Now they are again of two types, that is the natural auxin and synthetic auxin. So indole acetic acid is the natural one, whereas the remaining IBA and AA 2,4-D, they are considered to be synthetic, they are produced synthetically. Their transport is basipetal. Now remember, this is a very specific feature of auxins. Okay, basipetal means towards the base. That means they are polar in direction. That means they are produced at one pole and they are transported to the opposite pole, the another pole. So transport auxins is, basipetal transport of auxin is what? Basipetal. That means towards the base. That is base seeking direction. In other words, auxin moves from the shoot tip towards the roots and from root tip towards the shoot. So when they are produced at the growing part of the shoot, that means the stem, apical region of the stem, then from there, where they are produced towards the root. So at one pole they are produced, then they will be moving towards the opposite direction, towards the base. And if they are produced at the tip of the root, they will start moving towards the shoot. So at one place, if they are produced to the opposite direction, that's why they are considered to be polar movement. Transport is polar. Apical dominance is a very, very specific feature in case of auxins. Now what is that apical dominance? I'll tell you. High levels of auxin in the stem just above lateral buds block their growth. That is blockage of growth of lateral buds by presence of terminal buds. If shoot tip is removed, the auxin level behind the lateral buds is reduced and lateral buds begin to grow. The auxin which form the blockage to keep lateral buds small is reduced so they can grow. Now, very common example in case of this apical, try to understand apical dominance. Dominance means what? Their influence over there in the apical region. When as it is produced over there, the dominance is there. So the buds which are in the apical region will be flowering, will be showing proper growth. But the below that apical region, whatever the axes are present in the axial region, the buds will not show proper growth, and that is what called as apical dominance. Because of the influence on the apical region, it suppresses the growth of the lateral part of the buds growing on the lateral part. I'll show you with the help of this diagram. See, what is that apical dominance? See, this is what active apical bud. Okay, so here, as you know that in the growing part only auxins are produced, the shoot growing tip, here auxins are produced, and because of that, this growth of the apical bud is seen. But because of that, if you see the axial buds here, lateral buds, they cannot show proper growth, and that's why this is dominated. This apical growth dominates over the lateral growth. But if you see in this next diagram, if this apical part region is removed, then automatically what happens? The release of the oxygen is transported down, and automatically this region receives the oxygens, and this the lateral part growth shows the blood growing. They grow, lateral buds grow properly. So lateral branch growth are inhibited near the shoot apex, but less so farther from the tip. Apical dominance is disrupted in some plants by removing the shoot tip, causing the plant to become bushy. Now, if you see, even in the gardens, you might have observed that these different types of plants which are considered to be showy, they are pruned. The pruning is a very common practice in horticulture. That means what is done? The apical regions are cut and they are made in a different shape. That is another thing. But as they are dominating the lateral growth of the branches, these apical regions are cut. That is what called as pruning. Okay. So you can see in this diagram also, this is the where apical bud, this is these are the axils. When this apical region is removed, automatically these axillary buds will grow, show these lateral branches will show proper growth. So apical bud, when it is removed, the lateral branches will showing, giving a bushy appearance. That's why all these horticulture in the gardens you can see these different shaped structures are made. That is not the only the reason, but when the apical part is cut, removed, it gives the bushy appearance. That is the reason. Auxin is the first hormone to be discovered in plants. Discovery of auxins dates back to 19 when Charles Darwin was studying tropical plants. He exposed canary grass coleoptile to unilateral light. He concluded that a growth stimulus is developed in the coleoptile tip and transmitted downwards to the growth zone. This has caused bending of the tip towards light. And to prove this, again, the similar type of experiment was whatever the experiment performed by Darwin and his son, the same similar type of experiment was performed by F.W. Venn successfully to prove the action of auxins. Okay, so when successfully isolated neutral auxin from adenopeptide tapes, he cut off the tip and placed them on small agar blocks. Then, after a certain period of time, placed the agar blocks asymmetrically on cut coleoptile stem that caused bending. And he demonstrated the presence of which could diffuse agar blocks and named substance as auxins. Now, what is done by the in this experiment by Event, I tell you, Avena is a plant where coleoptile and coleorhiza. The meaning of coleoptile and coleorhiza, the coleoptile and coleorhiza. Coleoptile, that is the shoot which is growing, that protects. Coleoptile gives rise to shoot apex, and coleorhiza gives rise to root apex. Now he performed the experiment on the growing part of the shoot, that is the coleoptile region. And what he did, he removed that tip and placed in the agar block. Okay, and then these agar blocks. So what are agar blocks? Then whatever the substance was present in the coleoptile, that particular growing shoot, it transported to the agar, that is the jelly-like substance. Automatically, that agar block might have received that substance from that region, coleoptile region, and when locked on the removed part of this, then what was observed, you can see here in this diagram. This is the region and agar which is kept that is the coleoptile tip which was removed, placed on the agar block, and that agar block was kept here asymmetrically. That means it is not completely placed at the center, but at one side. You can see in this diagram, this agar block is kept at one side of this stem. Okay, then what is observed? Bending of the stem towards the opposite side is observed. You can see it is kept at the left side, that agar block, and the bending is seen at the right side. So at this accumulates auxin on left cells, elongate and bends coleoptile to the right. So this is what observed by Wendt. So what happens when auxin is added to a stem? The stem will bend away from the auxin, because auxin is present in the agar block. That substance, whatever was the substance, is now transported in the agar block from the coleoptile part, that shoot, growing shoot part, and the same block was kept asymmetrically on the removed part of this stem. Then what happened? The bending is observed in the opposite direction. The agar block is kept on the left side and the bending is observed on the right side. So this is what observed, and the stem will bend away from the auxin and it elongates faster on the extra auxin side. So this other side. Okay. So this was the observation by Wendt, and he named this substance as auxin. Now we will see applications of auxin, how it is working in the growth of the plants. First, that is cellular elongation. Auxin can induce and amplify proton pumping, where acidified cell walls have increased elasticity, which lead to cell elongation. Now, in simple way, you just remember, you know, what happens if yesterday we have discussed the three stages, that is cell division, cell elongation, and cell maturation. If you remember the root region. Okay, so after the cell division, what is the next part? Cell elongation. Until and unless cell gets elongated, the growth will not be observed, and so this growth is observed by increase in the length, in the breadth, or in the girth. But here it is considered to be increase in the height or the length of the tissue cells. That is what cell elongation. Now the second, that is cell differentiation. Now the next, that is the third region, if you remember yesterday we discussed, that is the maturation. When the cell matures, the functions get differentiated. The cells function, a specific type of function only is performed, that is what differentiation. Now in this case, what you need to remember, when auxin is present or applied to the plants, then what happens? The auxins promote differentiation of vascular bundles. You know, vascular tissue, that is xylem and phloem. So these two tissues get separated, differentiated, and this in detail you need not to remember that auxins plus sugar will give rise to vascular tissue, or low sugar, high sugar, that you need not to remember. But that cell differentiation, that means xylem and phloem. And then one more thing, now we are coming to that point in case of tissue culture also, when in tissue culture, from a small part of the tissue or the cells, when the entire plant is developed, that in that case, first of all, undifferentiated part is produced. That is called as callus. But when auxins are added in the medium, that callus initiates the growth of the shoot and root in a combination with the cytokinins. So this is what you just remember, that cell elongation, cell differentiation. Then the next is ethylene production. IA, indole acetic acid or indole 3 acetic acid, apparently stimulates the production of ethylene. See, ethylene is also one of the regulator. So for the production of ethylene, auxins are responsible. Then inhibition of root growth. Now, when it happens, if the percentage of auxin is more than the particular specific amount, then it inhibits the root elongation. However, if the auxin is in a small quantity, very low quantity, then it favors the root elongation. So that's why the concentration of auxins and other growth hormone like cytokinins is made in a specific way as per the requirement of that particular plant in the tissue culture laboratory. Then the next is stimulate root initiation. As I said just now, that roots always form at the basal end of the cutting. Okay, so when stem cutting are used as a explant in the tissue culture, then low amount of auxin will initiate the roots in that stem cutting. Then formation of adventitious roots. There are different types of roots. So taproot system, then the other one adventitious root system. Then if you see in this way, artificially, in case of tissue culture, if these are the explants used, the stem cuttings are used, stem is already there. What is required artificially to produce is what? Roots. So adventitious roots are produced with the by the application of auxins. Now, next, all plants do first after flower of flower. In case of some family pineapple and case, it initiates the action, it's the flowering, and once it is produced, initiated, then IAA acid promotes the formation of female flowers. That one more important application, that is parthenocarpic fruit development. Most of the students might have heard that parthenocarpic fruit development. So pollination of flowers of angiosperms initiates the formation of seeds. But as the seeds mature, they release auxin to the surrounding flower parts, which develop into fruit that covers the seeds. And some commercial growers deliberately initiate fruit development by applying auxin to the flowers. Not only does this ensures that all flowers will set fruit, but it also maximizes the likelihood that all the fruits will be ready for harvest at the same time. This not only for flowering is initiated, but in the development of the fruits, when the flowers are treated with the auxins, in case of commercial fruits, they are treated with the auxins, synthetic or auxins are used, and when not only all flowers they are set into fruit, but they maximizes the likelihood this all fruits look similar and all fruits get ready for harvest at the same time, because that is useful for the commercial product. So that's why this is applied. Now the next growth hormone is gibberellins. Gibberellins are plant hormones that promote growth, seed germination, and leaf expansion. They occur at low concentrations in vegetative tissues, but at higher concentrations in germinating seeds. See, the most important role of this gibberellins is seed germination. Very, very important, because they are present in vegetative parts like shoot or root or leaves, but they are in a very low concentration. But they are higher concentration in the germinating seeds, and they induce cell elongation and cell division. Important for plant growth and development through flowering and seed germination. So very important. Just like in case of auxins, the most important role is apical dominance, very specific feature of the auxins. Just like here, seed germination is the most peculiar character of the gibberellins, or one of the important applications of gibberellins, you can say. Here the site is young leaves, roots, developing seeds, and fruits. The most important part is the developing seeds, that is endosperm of the developing seeds. Transport made in the tissue in which it is used. Wherever it is produced, there it shows its action. So it is not polar like auxins. When applied to intact plants, GA usually causes an increase, unlike auxins, not only to a particular part, but to the entire one. So it overcomes dwarfism in mutants that have mutation in the GA synthesis pathway. For example, that means if dwarf means what? Short plant. If the entire plant is treated with this GA, that will result into tall one. That means wild type is tall, but in some cases, because of mutation, that plant has become dwarf. Then by application of GA, gibberellins, it can come to its original uh, length, height. And if so, dwarf plant with the application of gibberellic acid, it becomes tall. So it stimulates elongation. Why it is tall? Because it is working in the cell elongation. That's why the height is increased. Cells length is increased, so automatically height of the plant is increased, so that it becomes tall, and it acts on intact plant. One by one, again remaining applications also we will discuss. So the most important is what? It promotes stem elongation. So here is the example where you can see the um, plant which is dwarf mutant, but when GA3 is applied to the entire plant, you can see the difference in the plant. Here it is very small, which is mutated because of the mutation that has become dwarf, but when applied, this GA is applied, this dwarf mutant becomes elongated tall, that is by the application of gibberellins. Okay, then seed dormancy. Just now I was telling that the most important higher concentration of the gibberellins GA is in the seeds, and that is in the endosperm of the seeds, which is considered to be the major part or having the role in providing nutrition to the growing seed. Okay, the food is stored there, right? So gibberellins have fundamental role in breaking seed dormancy and stimulating germination. Now you know the meaning of dormancy. Some of you might have learned, remember, last year we have learned this word. Dormancy, that means what? Seeds remain in the dormant stage means what? All the physiological activities are stopped. They are not in a position to grow, or that means to germinate. That is what called as dormant phase. That means the resting phase. Okay, dormant phase is what? Resting phase. All physiological activities have been stopped. And in case of all type of seeds, this dormancy period is different. All the seeds, they show dormant period. That resting period is there in case of all plants, all the seeds, but it varies from species to species. In few species it is just hardly few days, in some it is few weeks, in some cases it is months, in some cases it is so many years also. But if the plant is economically very important, and if the dormant period is like months or years, then how it will be useful? So that dormant period, in case of, especially in case of economically important plants, that dormant period can be reduced by the application of gibberellins. So how it works? The endosperm of many seeds contain protein and carbohydrate as reserve food material, and upon which a developing embryo relies for energy and nutrition. When seed starts germinating, that endosperm is utilized for that growing embryo, right? So growing embryo is dependent on this endosperm. These reserves must be mobilized and transported to the embryo, and by the action of gibberellins, what happens then? Hydrolytic and proteolytic enzymes break down endosperm into endosperm starch and proteins into smaller and more easily transported molecules like sugars and amino acids. When they are present in the form of such type of starch and proteins, they are considered to be macromolecules. They are not easily made available for the growth. But when these are broken into smaller ones, like starch into amino acids, proteins, sugars and amino acids, these are the smaller molecules, easy for the transportation. So by the action of these hydrolytic enzymes, that breaking down of the endosperm takes place. That endosperm starch and proteins get converted into simple sugars and amino acids. Okay, so carbohydrates into simple sugars and the proteins into simple amino acids, they are made by the action of gibberellic acid. Now you can see in this diagram picture where this is the intact seed, this is the embryo, and this is the endosperm, which is starchy endosperm, and this is the aileron layer. And now gibberellic acid is applied, which moves to the aileron layer, and then it breaks the seed dormancy. That means what, embryo gets the this from the endosperm, that conversion of these proteins and carbohydrates takes place into simple amino acids and sugars. So this is what embryo starts developing. So you can see developing embryo, first radicle and plumule, which gives rise to radicle gives rise to roots and plumule gives rise to shoots. So this is the application, very important application of gibberellins or gibberellic acid. Now the next is parthenocarpic fruit development. Now you must have observed previously so many fruits were having many seeds and also of large size. But because of the application, now we have made so many fruits without seeds, or those present in a very small number, and the size of the seeds is also very small, reduced. Size of the number of seeds is reduced, size of the seeds is reduced, and even we have developed so many fruits as without seeds, that is seedless fruits. Okay. Now this is very common example, you might have observed also, that it induces fruit enlargement. This is the wild or the normal variety of the grapes. But when we apply the gibberellins, external application of gibberellins, it also enlarges fruit size, because its role is what? Cell elongation. So automatically fruits are also made in large size. So the size of the fruits also is increased. Then here in the same role, that is cell division and elongation, is observed in case of apple by application of gibberellins. In the first, it is the normal one, and after the application, the size you can see, that is a larger size. And one more, that is the stimulants in plants, substitute for long days or treatments for that are necessary for flowering. Now try to understand. Now in case of the vegetables, uh, in case of some of plants where it gives the rosette appearance, rose-like appearance. In case of cabbage, if you see the how that rosette structure is there, isn't it? That is, and bolting, that is in case of generally what happens, some of the plants need cold, what you can say, the instead of treatment I can say that particular time period, until and unless they go through the cold time period, they do not show flowering. Okay, so in such cases, that means that obviously the period taken, time taken for the flowering of the plants will be more. But if these plants are treated with the gibberellic acids or gibberellins, then that cold treatment, that is what considered, that period, that after, until and unless they are treated or they go through the cold temperature, they will not flower. That area, that period, that time period can be reduced by the application of gibberellic acids or gibberellins, you can say. And bolting is what? These plants which give the rosette type of appearance, those plants, so it is very helpful. It shows proper growth, giving the enlargement in the size of the leaves, or in case of the flowering, size is increased. Okay. Then the next, that is in plants, sex expression with the separate male and female flowers, GA application can be very important. It determines the which is the female flower, which is the male flower. So for example, in case of cucumber and spinach, GA treatment increases the proportion of male flowers, whereas in case of maize, its treatment, GA treatment, causes female flower development. So that also is one of the applications of gibberellins. Then the next is cytokinins. Cytokinins are the hormones that stimulate cell division and that is cytokinesis. cytoplasm and kinesis. Cyto and kinesis, when if you split this word, cyto and kinesis. Kinesis what? Division. Cyto is what? Cytoplasm. Cytoplasm gets divided. Okay. So it promotes that is the word has come, that is cytokinins, from this particular feature. These hormones may also be involved in controlling leaf senescence and the growth of lateral branches. The meaning of leaf senescence? In case of leaves, after a particular period, the amount of the chlorophyll is reduced, so that leaf, which is green in structure, by the reduction in the amount of chlorophyll, what happens then? Its color gets changed. That is what senescence. And then automatically, as the amount gets reduced and reduced, then automatically then it falls off. Okay. So that senescence, leaf senescence, is controlled by the application of hormones. So in the most active, this is most active naturally occurring cytokinin is the zeaxanthin. And cytokinins occur in most plants, including mosses, ferns, conifers, algae, and diatoms. So not only the terrestrial plants, but in all different types of plants also cytokinin is observed. Site is meristematic region of the roots. And this is known in part because roots can be cultured, that is grown in artificial medium without added cytokinin, but stem cells cannot. I'll tell you what is that. Cytokinins are also produced in developing embryos. So in developing embryos also it is present, and the main region is meristematic region of the roots. Okay. Now, then the plant tissue, in plant tissue culture, cytokinin requirement is very important. When I was telling you about the auxins, so the role of auxin and the role of cytokinin, both is very important. If you remember, I told you that the apical region of shoot and root, the auxins are present, especially stem apex. If you see shoot apex, and here what we just studied, the site of the cytokinins, that is the root apex. So the combination of auxins and cytokinins is very, very important in case of tissue culture. Tissue culture is what? It's a method of, it's a technique of growing the entire plant body from few cells or tissue. A group of cells, or group of cells is what? Tissue, with a common origin and similar function, you can say. Okay, using artificial nutrient medium under aseptic conditions, controlled conditions of temperature, light, pH, etc. All these conditions are maintained. So the cells are grown on nutrient medium, which is the artificial nutrient medium, and from these cells, the entire, or from these cells or tissues, or a small part of the plant body, might be root apex, shoot apex, leaf apex. Why apex? Because this apical region only shows the presence of meristematic cells. That means that they are having the ability to divide and redivide. That's why I'm telling. And these parts, growing tips of leaf, shoot, or root, they are considered to be called as explant. Okay. So from the leaf, from the shoot apex, as well as from the root apex, the entire plant body can be grown artificially using artificial nutrient medium under aseptic conditions and controlled conditions of pH, temperature, light, etc. Okay, and if just remember, when you are using the shoot as explant, what is needed there? Root development is necessary. So what should be the more in quantity? When root apical region or root apex is used as an explant, then what is necessary to be grown? What artificially is to be grown? That is the shoot apices or shoot apex. Then what auxin is necessary to be present? And if leaf is used as an explant, then from the leaf you want to grow the entire plant body. So both shoot and root initiating hormones are necessary to add. So the concentration and the percentage of auxins and cytokinins is very specific in the nutrient medium, that is the artificial nutrient medium, in the tissue culture experiments. So what is callus? I just tell you. Callus is the undifferentiated growth of the cells. When we are using that explant, like root apex, shoot apex, or leaf apex, whatever that is called as apical region of that particular part, that is called as explant. When we are growing it on the nutrient medium, then first of all, uncontrolled or undifferentiated mass of cells you can observe. That gives the appearance of tumor. So that mass of cells is called as callus. So we cannot see or differentiate which part is shoot from where the shoot is growing or root is growing, or it will grow as it is. So in that case, from that mass, that is callus, shoot apex, root apex, or the shoot growth or the root growth is needed to convert it into the entire plant body, right? So in that case, callus plus auxin, little growth of the callus is observed, and without cytokinin. But callus plus auxin and cytokinins, when it is added, then callus grows well, and still it is undifferentiated. But when it is differentiated, when it forms the root and when it forms the shoot, that is shown here. Callus plus low concentration cytokinin and auxin, that will initiate roots. As we discussed, low amount of auxin will initiate the roots. Same way, when in high quantity, that callus will grow well and forms shoot. So this concentration is very, very specific. So in the tissue culture experiment, both auxins and cytokinins role is very, very important. And this is the diagram which shows that these are the glass cells used, artificial. This is the artificial nutrient medium, and this is the explant. If it is whatever the explant we use, whether it is leaf or root or shoot, accordingly, this is, and here unorganized mass of cells from this explant is produced, that is called as callus. And using this nutrient medium, now you can see here the roots are produced, and here you can see shoots are produced. And then this is what called as callus, which gives rise to callus. In the further process gives rise to roots and shoot roots. So this is what, then small plantlet is produced. Again, it is maintained with the temperature, light, and everything. And then after a particular period, then it grows, attains a particular growth, and then can be transferred to the soil. Next application regulates the cell cycle, cell division. Hence, the name is cytokinins, especially by controlling the transition from G2 to mitosis. If you remember the cell cycle, do you remember the cell cycle? G1, S, G2, and then M phase. If you remember, M phase is what? Mitosis. So, transition from G2 to M, that is the mitosis. This period is very, very important. Okay. Mitosis is what? Actual cell division takes place, right? So when there is transition from G2 to mitosis, then that actual cell division is regulated by the cytokinins. So first the division of nucleus and then division of cytoplasm takes place. You have learned it last year. Okay, the effect is moderated by cyclin dependent protein kinase. Remember that play a very important role in the cell division. Now, here, direct application of cytokinins promote the growth of axillary buds. Now, in the same diagram, we were talking about when the auxin, this apical part is removed, then it shows the what? Lateral growth. But for that, what is needed? Apical part is to be removed. But if you apply directly the cytokinins on the apical region, then that promotes the growth of the lateral branches. So this direct application of the cytokinins is effective in case of cytokinins. Okay. So in case of the plants for the lateral growth. The next is senescence. This is also very important. I was telling you that's what senescence means. Okay, the proper amount of chlorophyll. Senescence is a type of aging process which occurs in plants, especially in case of leaves. It is immediately it is observed. Okay, loss of chlorophyll, RNA, proteins, and lipids. That is the type of aging. That is senescence. Cytokinin application to an intact leaf markedly reduces the extent and rate of chlorophyll and protein degradation and leaf drop. If there is degradation of the amount of chlorophyll, automatically what will happen? Yellowing of the leaves takes place, and that yellowing of the leaves means what? That is what? Senescence. And automatically, if it continues, then what will happen? It will drop down, fall down from the plant. So it can be controlled from, if it is the falling of leaf is observed at, before the actual age of senescence, before maturation, then this application is very important. Cytokinins can be applied, and that so that chlorophyll content remains intact. There is no loss of reduction of chlorophyll, and that's why the leaves remain uh, fresh green for a longer time, and that to some extent senescence can be controlled, and so there is no falling of the leaves or the dropping of the leaves than the normal period. So this is what senescence, very important role of cytokinins. So cytokinins promote the light induced formation of chlorophyll and conversion of etioplast to chloroplast. So greening process takes place. Uh, Not actually from yellowing to greening takes place, but it reduces the rate of maturation or yellowing, that is the senescence. That is what called as greening. Okay. And promote cell expansion, that is also very important, that it stimulates the expansion of cotyledons, and the mechanism is associated with increased plasticity of the cell wall and not associated with the acidification. That first was associated with the application of auxins, acidification all, but here only the plasticity of the cell wall is increased. Just remember that promotes cell expansion. Expansion is because of the plasticity, isn't it? Now the last one, that is abscisic acid. Abscisic acid cites plastids, most tissues, especially leaves and seeds. Again, it is related to somewhat to the this one, senescence, and I will come to that point. Purposely, I didn't tell you right now. Now, xylem and phloem, these are the transport regions. What is the role? Inhibits growth, so promotes dormancy, closes stomata, and produced in response to stress. This last point is very important. Then you will come to know why this is, though inhibitor is important or playing the role in the regulation of the plant. When the growth is, why it is necessary to inhibit the growth, why it promotes seed dormancy. Seed dormancy, just now we discussed in case of gibberellin. By the application of gibberellins, what happens? The resting period, dormant period is reduced, and the seed starts germinating. But here the exactly opposite application, that is the role of our abscisic acid, that it promotes dormancy. Why? Why it is necessary to promote means dormant period? Why to increase the dormant period? We'll discuss this point now. And also closes stomata. If you come to this point, that is stress, if the environmental conditions, atmospheric conditions are not normal, but they are adverse, means what? If there is drought, there is a scarcity of water, very high temperature, which that means that environmental condition, atmospheric condition is not good, or it's not favorable for the growth of the plant, then in that case, what is necessary? Obviously, seeds should remain in the same condition, that is called as dormant condition, so that they will not germinate and they will sustain in that particular period. If the dormancy is increased, all the physiological activities are stopped or reduced or lowered. Okay, so that's why the seeds will not germinate, because the conditions are not favorable. If the seeds germinate, then what will happen? If the conditions are not favorable, obviously whatever the food material is present, that will be consumed by that growing part, embryo, and then after that there will be the death. That means the plant will not grow only. So in that case, this is very important. So seed dormancy can be promoted. That means that dormant period can be increased in such cases, that is the drought. If the drought is the situation, so that's why ABA is also considered to be stress hormone, because in the stress, when there is stress to the environmental factors, like For example, if water is not available, minerals are not available, whatever the remaining factors which are required for the growth of the plant body, if they are not available or very high temperature is present, then just now we were discussing about the stomatal closing of the stomata. That means abscisic acid, because of the application of abscisic acid or naturally it is present, closing of the stomata takes place. So what will happen by closing of the stomata? Automatically the plant water which is present in the plant body will remain in plant, it will not go away. The transpiration will not take place, and that loss of water can be reduced, and that water can be consumed for that particular plant. So this is what very important. So it's the key internal signal that facilitates the drought resistance in plants. So that's why it is very important. So under water stress conditions, ABA accumulates in leaves and causes stomata to close rapidly, reducing transpiration and preventing further water loss. See, this is very important role of abscisic acid. So ABA causes the opening of Apelix potassium channels in guard cell plasma membrane, leading to a huge loss of this ion from the cytoplasm. So these ions also will not be moved out of the plant body through stomata. So simultaneous osmotic loss of water leads to decrease in guard cell turgor, which consequent closure of stomata. When there is no turgidity, obviously these guard cells will close down and the stomata obviously will be closing. So the closing of stomata is very important. That is because of abscisic acid. And freezing resistance, that also ABA levels are associated with the increased freezing resistance. That means it appears to mediate the plant's response to environmental stress such as freezing by regulating gene expression. Certain genes are switched on by ABA while others are switched off. That means what? This is a particular factor, the same, freezing resistance. When the conditions change, just like very high temperature, so such type of conditions, environmental conditions are there. So that is one of the conditions that is considered to be increased freezing resistance. In case of plants, some plants, it is useful where such condition is very important. The temperature part is very important, and that can be maintained by the application of ABA. And it plays role in seed dormancy. As I said that seeds ABA level is increased, so automatically the seeds remain in the dormant phase for a longer time. So there is no breaking of the seed dormancy until and unless environmental factors are favorable. So the breaking of dormancy is associated with the decline in the level of ABA. That means what? When the environmental factors conditions become favorable, automatically ABA level will drop down. Okay, and GA level will be increased. So it plays opposite role to that of the gibberellic acids. Okay, and the last one, that is the ethylene. Just few minutes I will extend so that we can complete here. Ethylene is the only gaseous plant hormone. Remember, this is the gaseous plant hormone produced naturally by higher plants and is able to diffuse readily via intracellular spaces throughout the entire plant body. And it's involved primarily it is involved in the response to environmental stress. Again, that's why this is considered to be inhibited. Okay, that means during flooding, drought, etc. Its action is then infection, wounding, and mechanical pressure. In all these stress factors, environmental stress factor, this is very important. It influences wide range of developmental processes, including shoot elongation, flowering, seed germination, fruit ripening, and leaf abscission and senescence. See, it is related to senescence, then abscission. I was talking, when the senescence is completed, then a layer is formed at the base of the leaf on the stem. So that is called as abscission layer. And then that is what shows the maturity of that leaf. And then after the senescence is completed, that abscission layer is formed and the leaf drops down, falls down. And when it happens, in case of leaves and also in case of fruits, this ethylene plays very important role. So fruit ripening, naturally it ripens, so naturally this gas is produced. So but artificially in economically important fruits nowadays it is a very very common practice. Okay, why it is common practice? Because these uh, people, these what you can say, the uh, product which is to be taken into the market as per their uh, profit, these people they bring the fruit in the market, and for that what they do, they use raw fruits and they store the raw fruits, and as and when they need they apply this ethylene gas to those raw fruits, and as and when they need, by the application of ethylene, automatically what will happen, that will give rise to the ripening, because that is related to the fruit ripening. So each and every regulator, plant regulator, is having its own role. I will repeat this at the end, but just remember, in case of this fruit ripening, this ethylene plays a very very important role. So um, this is the example you can see here, where the application of ethylene, first of all, this is the raw fruit. By application, naturally actually it should go, but these people which want to get profit as per the requirement, they bring the fruits in the market, and as and when they require, they apply the ethylene, and this is what the result you can see. So here also this is one example, as and when required. So what happens, natural sugar, anthocyanin, less pectin, soft, and then aromatic, that means it gives aroma. So this is the role of ethylene. Acid, starch, chlorophyll, pectin, large organic acids, they are present, and when the ethylene is playing its role, these all the type of different types of enzymes, they are working, and then that results into the ripening. Pectinase, that is the wall, hydrolase, so amylase, kinase. So these enzymes work by the application of ethylene, and then softening of the skin, that means maturation of the fruit, whatever the differences you can see in the raw fruit and the mature one, ripened one, you can see. In case of mango also you can see, in case of banana you can see, in case of apple you can see, in case of so many fruits you can see. So in this is what ripening playing very important role. And the last one, that is the promotes flower senescence in some plants. So by the application of ethylene, flowering is also promoted. So, and these are just a quick review of the auxins who first discovered, means all these regulators who first discovered what is its effect. Auxins, first is growth, apical dominance is the specific uh, application effect. Then gibberellin is seed dormancy and also large size fruits. Then cytokinin, cell division, increase in the crop production. Ethylene, ripening of the fruits, hastening ripening of the plucked fruits very easily. And abscisic acid is what, in the formation of in case of senescence, that especially stress tolerant. So in the stress condition it is very very important. All along with these main roles, all other roles are played by these all um, regulators. So I took little bit more time, but I did not want to just keep the some part pending, so that's why I continued. And as it is the last lecture, we can, to some extent, I know you are you must be getting bored, but this is